joining us now is Horace Cooper. He is the co-chair of the Black leadership group, Project 21. Horace, I'm assuming that you also enjoyed this meeting between these two great, successful people. But just give me your first, I guess your first thoughts on how this all played out this week.
So I watched in amazement when, after this visit took place, there were media analyst after media analyst engaging in what, if had been said by anybody else about any other group, or even about Kanye West, would have been considered bigotry, would have considered hate speech. If, after Kanye West had called President Bush a racist and part of a knowing conspiracy with regard to what happened with Hurricane Katrina, if analysts had gone on the air and mocked him and said all of these kinds of things, they would have been accused of racism and bigotry. I watched 8 years of the Obama administration. How many celebrities came in and out, and there was never a conversation called, you need to be well-briefed and well-versed. I watched as these celebrities came to Washington. They were asked to testify. They spoke knowingly. Just last month, I got to see celebrities come to town, one Alyssa Milano, and say that she apparently thinks that the way the benefit, the protection of the innocent until proven guilty should work is once you are accused, the burden needs to shift to you to disprove it. I didn't hear people say, well, wait a second, how would that work? Why does that work? Again, Whoopi Goldberg said Kavanaugh was a rapist, and yet when Roman Polanski, who was actually charged, I think that's more than credibly accused, charged with sex with a 13-year-old underage, she said that wasn't, quote, rape. It, to me, is really, really remarkable that there is this amazing mainstream media assault called black people can't demonstrate that they think for themselves or they don't support the bandwagon of what establishment elites believe. That's what this is all about from my perspective.
You mean you didn't see people like Bakari Sellers on CNN talking about Kanye West like this?
Kanye West is what happens when Negroes don't read.
Like that, I was just trying to find the clip there. I mean, that's what they said.
That would be clearly called hate rhetoric if that were said in a different context.
How is someone not fired after saying that?
Yeah, that would clearly be called hate rhetoric if it were said in a different context. It is really, truly remarkable how the mainstream media has piled on. But here is the good news. People have misunderstood, even some on the right. Kanye West is not the leading indicator. He's a trailing indicator. The truth is, the people that he's talking to, the people that he's interacting with, are saying many of the same things and raising many of the same concerns. Politico, Reuters, even the New York Times has begrudgingly acknowledged that there has been a very elevated level of interest in the Trump administration, in free market policies, in particular by black men. This is a phenomenon that is not going to just be dismissed with claims that someone's ignorant, that claims that someone's illiterate, or claims that someone is mentally ill, which, by the way, just hours ago, we were told it's always inappropriate to mock people, even if they're not mentally ill, with the idea that they might be mentally ill, even though the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Illnesses, has never identified political statements or positions as any way affiliated with any kind of mental illness. This double standard, this hypocrisy, the good news about it is it's just not going to work.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to work either. And recently we had a poll that showed that Donald Trump is at 36% approval among African Americans. Horace, how do you think African Americans are going to be voting in 3 weeks? It's just 3 weeks away, these midterms.
Okay, so my organization doesn't get into the specific politics of things, but I can tell you broadly speaking, let's look at some trend numbers. In 2012, fewer blacks voted for Barack Obama than voted for him in 2008. And in 2016, fewer still voted for Hillary Clinton. Here is the biggest takeaway that I think people should note, and this is what I meant by this is a out of the bag, and it's not going to easily be contained. 13% of black men voted for Donald Trump. 13%. Now, in 2012, when fewer blacks were voting for Barack Obama than they did in 2008, what did they know? They knew the same thing that white Americans knew, that Latino Americans knew, that women knew, because Barack Obama is the first president to be reelected since FDR that got fewer black votes than any other president who was successfully reelected, and also fewer women votes, fewer white votes, fewer every single category, because Americans were recognizing they did not like this. I predict that black Americans are going to be thrilled that now is a good time for them to go out and buy a car, and we're seeing records with new cars being purchased. I think they're going to be thrilled with the idea that it's time to take a family vacation. Just in the 18 months of the Trump administration, we have set records for the number of people in a decade who are just now taking their very first family vacation. It's the end of the staycation. It's time for people to really enjoy. Waiting and seeing that there's more money than month at the end of the paycheck is a new revelation, and I believe you're just not going to be able to convince people to throw that away with mumbo-jumbo like you are illiterate, you're uninformed, you're mentally ill. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I hope not. I want to play a clip. And again, folks, I'm talking to Horace Cooper. He's the co-chair of the Black Leadership Group, Project 21. You can follow all of their news on Twitter at Project 21 News. This is going to be clip 5. This is Kanye on how he's talking about, creating jobs and how if we have China make everything, we're cheating our own country and our own inner cities that have people that have been sidelined that need jobs. Let's take a listen.
And we have to make our core be empowered. We have to bring jobs into America because our best export is entertainment and ideas. But when we make everything in China and not in America, then we're cheating on our country. And we're putting people in positions to have to do illegal things to end up in the cheapest factory ever, the prison system.
So there, that message to me, Horace, that's not just appealing, I can't imagine, just to the black community. That's an appealing message to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, for the last 8 years, we had, under the Obama administration, the prior 8 years before this term, we had government policies that exacerbated the challenge when it came to creating new opportunities in the United States. Wholesale companies said, oh, I get it, America isn't going to be a welcoming place, and so they ran for the hills. All of a sudden, a president comes in and he says, why don't we make America a place where business can occur? We are seeing, according to the Department of Labor, not just Americans, but in particular, Black Americans are doing better than the population at large. We have set 5 records for low unemployment for Black Americans. Guess what? 3 of the 5 worst records for unemployment were set during the Obama administration. People can see the difference. Kanye West can see the difference. Americans just going about their day can tell when there's opportunity, when things are improving. We absolutely must have the government not be in the business of crushing opportunity, but should be in the business of welcoming opportunity. What the left has successfully done while crushing opportunity is they have convinced a large number of people that it's only them that are being left out. And they highlight the 1%ers in our midst. 1%ers have always succeeded. They will always succeed. The difference is, during 8 years of the Obama administration, we managed to kill the hopes and dreams of the middle class. Meanwhile, the left keeps telling women, keeps telling blacks, keeps telling Latinos, it's just you that's being hurt, and it's because of those mean old white guys. Well, guess what? You can now see for yourself. Prosperity, economic growth, opportunity, new homes being constructed, new homes being purchased. That is something that the American people will embrace, and I will predict across the board you're going to see something very different in November than you might have predicted in an off-year election, because the American people want to keep the good times going.
Yeah, that incredible, and shrinking middle class is definitely an issue that I think many Americans, regardless of race or gender, is something that we all want to preserve. And as you said, Horace, the Democrats, they're not only about racial division and stoking that, they're also now, they've moved on to gender. They're now pitting men against women just as whole groups. I mean, I don't know what's next. What do you think they're going to go after next?
Well, we're clearly going down the path of identity politics. Look, I want to just give a little observation. In 1980, President Ronald Reagan won a very significant victory, and it was only exceeded by his 1984 reelection. Many Americans forget that he was succeeded by his vice president, setting a 3 consecutive terms of one political party. When that third election occurred, Democrats decided, you know what? We need to take a new look. We need to re-examine, and you saw the rise of what was called the DLC. They were moderate to conservative Democrats, and they took 4 years to come up with an agenda and a vision that they thought would have broader appeal. Now, that never got actually a majority of popular vote, but it did get a majority of the Electoral College. It takes 4 years to do that, and I'm observing, I assume you're observing, I've seen nothing but resist and identity politics for the last 2 years, and it makes it really, really impossible for any political party to position itself and make itself attractive. The American people deserve viable, attractive options on election day. When you cannot do that, you surrender the ability of there to be the kind of good competition. But where we're headed right now, the left has completely taken over a political party. They're alienating as many blacks as they can. You can't take someone like Kanye West, who is so popular both in the white and the black community, and demean him and think no one's going to notice. It's going to be okay. These tactics do not work. And just as you mentioned, the men against women tactics also do not work. Men and women, they're married. Women have husbands, they have fathers, they have sons, they have uncles, they have nephews. They care about how men are treated, and the same is true for men vis-a-vis women. This strategy of divide and conquer is ridiculous, it's dangerous, and it will not likely yield popular political success.
Yeah, absolutely right, Horace. One thing that I wanted to bring up before I let you go is this new story out today on CNN's State of the Union. Democratic gubernatorial nominee Stacey Abrams, she's running in Georgia against the current Secretary of State there, Brian Kemp. And she brought up on CNN this morning this issue of voter verification laws and how Kemp is using it to suppress minority votes. This tactic of bringing up, and this happens over and over and over again when it comes to conversations surrounding minority groups, this idea of, you know, voter registration and voter ID is suppressing minorities. I find that offensive, and I don't know why the Democrats keep falling back on that.
I find it very offensive. It's not racial suppression to ask for ID if you want to buy liquor. It's not racially suppressive to ask for ID if you want to get cigarettes. It's not racially suppressive to ask for ID before you can board an airplane. It's not racially suppressive to be able to turn on utilities unless you produce ID. In fact, it's not even racially suppressive to ask for your Medicaid or Medicare benefits without having to produce an ID. It is really, really remarkable to argue, as they do, that there is somehow some significant number of Americans who are going through their lives without ID. Let me tell you what I think is awful. What is awful is when ghost voters, when convicts, when impersonators come in and vote and wrest away your right of self-determination. We saw this in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, even as late as the 60s, where a population wasn't given the right to pick its own representatives. What a voter ID does, a law does, is it ensures that the actual residents, the real people affected by the rules and the regulations, are the ones who are going to be making the decision. If you were a legitimate civil rights organization or a candidate looking out for people, you'd be championing, let's make sure real Americans, actual residents, are the ones who are showing up on Election Day.
Living Americans, breathing Americans.
Absolutely.
Horace Cooper, always a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate you calling in tonight. Again, folks, Horace Cooper, he is the co-chair of the Black Leadership Group, Project 21.